In my past life, the temple caught fire. I stopped paging you from rushing in to save people. Paging you emerged unscathed. But Sumao, the cousin from the Pei family, perished in the flames. Afterward, paging you treated me as before, still drawing my eyebrows, chatting idly, and harmonizing like Qin and Se, until the day I went into labor. He locked me inside and set the room ablaze. He said, "You should taste the flames devouring you." I was burned alive. Only after death did I learn. Sumao was never a cousin of the Pei family at all. She was his beloved mistress, kept by his side. This time around, as I watched the raging flames before me, I tearfully released his hand. Pei Lang. Meow meow. Meow meow is still inside. Help! Fire! Someone put it out. I awoke to the frantic cries of the old woman outside. I sat up, cold sweat pouring down my face. Before my eyes, the raging flames seemed ever present, trapped within the fire. My abdomen twisted in waves of agony. Warm liquid trickled down my body. The pain nearly crushed me, yet I forced myself to pound on the door. My voice was hoarse. Pei Lang, let me out. I'm giving birth. The fire burned fiercer and fiercer. My husband, Pei Jingyu, stood outside, tall and graceful as jade. He showed no intention of opening the door. He even poured a bucket of oil onto the window frame, feeding the flames until they roared fiercer and hotter, until the fire completely engulfed me. I snapped awake. Hui Chun's voice rang in my ears. Young lady, what's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? Don't be afraid, miss. Hui Chun is here. Such familiar words. In my previous life, the last words I heard before dying were Hui Chun's "Don't be afraid, miss." Back then, Pei Jingyu had locked me inside the room. She was pinned to the ground by several maidservants, beaten with sticks, blow after blow. Even as she endured the blows, she struggled to crawl toward me. At first, she cried, "Young mistress, don't be afraid. Hui Chun will save you." Later, her voice grew faint, as flames licked my knees and thick smoke blurred my consciousness. I heard her voice, choked with tears. She said, "Young mistress, don't be afraid. Hui Chun will go with you." I frantically grasped her hand. Warm, hot, alive. I awoke from the nightmare. I asked, "Hui Chun, what day is it today?" Outside. What's happening outside? Today is the day of the great fire at Huangjue Temple. By the time Hui Chun and I arrived, the flames outside were raging fiercer than ever. Amidst the blinding, earth-shaking flames, I spotted Pei Jingyu. He was running frantically. He still wore the cloak I had sewn for him myself, but the sash was gone, and he had lost one shoe. As soon as he approached, his brow furrowed, his voice trembling. "Meow meow. Is meow meow still inside?" I lowered my eyes, saying nothing. In my past life, I never understood until my dying breath why Pei Jingyu treated me this way. Pei Jingyu and I shared a bond since childhood. He was the sole heir of the Marquis of Xuanda's household. I was the legitimate daughter of Grand Tutor Chang's family. We grew up together, innocent and carefree. I believed I had never wronged him in my life. Even when the Pei family fell on hard times and his father was gravely injured, it was I who repeatedly pleaded with my father to intercede on their behalf. Only then was the Pei family's title preserved. Yet after my death, as my soul drifted through the air, I heard his blood-curdling wail. "Qing Shuyi, if not for you, Meow Meow wouldn't have died. You claim innocence. But what of Meow Meow? She was carrying my child back then. You deserve to taste the agony of being consumed by flames. Only then will karma be clear. Retribution swift." Only then did I realize how deeply he hated me. He hated me for forcing him into marriage through debt, for usurping the place of his beloved. He hated me most for stopping him that day when the flames engulfed Huangjue Temple. That act tore him from his beloved, separating them by death. Yet I only feared for his safety. Seeing the raging flames, I knew rushing in meant certain doom, so I held him back. In fact, to stop him, to pull him out, I charged into the inferno myself. In the end, he emerged unscathed, while I bore a deep scar on my arm from shielding him from a falling desk. On rainy days, the pain and itch become unbearable. I never knew he had a beloved. That so-called cousin, Sumao, she was the one he deliberately kept in his household as his true love. I ask you, where is Miao Miao? Pei Jingyu's voice rang out once more. Tears welled up in my eyes without warning. I lowered my head slightly, and large droplets began to fall. This time, I still stood before him. Yet after a few moments, I willingly released the hand I was holding. Pei Lang. Miao Miao. Miao Miao is still inside. This time, without my obstruction, Pei Jingyu could finally rush toward the outcome he'd longed for. The one he'd never been able to attain. And so could I. Pei Jingyu charged inside. He flung me aside almost without hesitation, even shoving me hard behind him. His eyes blazed with a single message: don't stop me. He was going to save the girl who held the very center of his heart. I fell helplessly to the ground, injuring my leg. I tried to stand, but fell again and again. Only tears fell in great drops, while I kept crying out loudly, Pei Lang, don't go! The fire is dangerous. The murmurs of those around me were incessant. Recently, a snow disaster had struck Jiangnan. Many officials' households had elderly members who were unwell, so we weren't the only family staying overnight at Huangjue Temple to pray for blessings. After Pei Jingyu's incident, many eyes turned to me. Some were mocking, some pitying, some just watching the spectacle. Amidst this, a hand reached out to help me up. It belonged to Xia Xian, the only daughter of the Duke of Dingwa, technically. I should address her as cousin. Are you all right? She asked. Before I could speak, Hui Chun piped up, her eyes brimming with tears. How could she be all right? Our young mistress is hurt like this. And that young master is so heartless. I silently gave her a mental thumbs up, though my face remained impassive. Instead, I let tears stream down my cheeks, a rather obvious attempt to feign distress. It's nothing serious. I was just worried about my husband. He was just acting out of concern. The one in the fire was Lady Pei's grandniece, my husband's cousin. A man as dutiful as my husband couldn't bear to see the old lady so grief-stricken. At these words, the surrounding area grew even quieter. The looks of sympathy from the crowd deepened. Someone murmured softly, but the fire was so intense. I pretended not to hear, fully immersed in my role as the stone wife waiting for her husband. After what felt like an eternity, Pei Jingyu finally emerged. He looked utterly exhausted. His back was scorched, and his right leg was crippled. Rumor had it he'd been struck by a falling beam inside. When the servants found him, he was trapped in a corner, unable to move. Sumao lay safely beneath him, wrapped in the large cloak I'd embroidered for him, now soaked through. Though her consciousness was hazy, she was miraculously unharmed. The servants wanted to carry them both out. But Pei Jingyu, mindful of propriety between men and women, and drawing on his lifelong martial training, gritted his teeth and limped forward to carry Sumao out himself. Such unyielding resolve. I marveled at Pei Jingyu's foolish devotion while wailing and throwing myself at him. Pei Jingyu, however, had eyes only for Sumao in his arms. Though he was on the verge of fainting, he still clutched her hand, urging me to find a doctor for her. Such profound devotion. Had the time and place been right, I would have cheered them on wholeheartedly. But I couldn't. I could only cry in a fluster. Cry in utter disarray. Cry until I was incapable of anything else. When Pei Jingyu was brought back to the Chien de Marquis mansion after the hastily summoned physician had bandaged his wounds, what greeted me was Lady Pei's teacup. I took a step back. Clang! The teacup shattered at my feet. Immediately after came Lady Pei's furious voice. Qing Shuyi! How dare you act as a daughter-in-law of the Pei family? Jingyu left in perfect health, how could he return like this? When he rushed in to fight the fire, couldn't you have stopped him? It happened again. In my past life, I stopped Pei Jingyu to avoid straining relations with him. Lady Pei immediately blamed me. She blamed me for stopping Pei Jingyu, for endangering her grandniece. Now that I didn't stop him, she blames me for harming him. Without a word, I knelt down with a thud. Xia Xian, who had followed me, couldn't bear to watch. How could this be Shuyi's fault? Only then did Lady Pei notice the outsiders and quickly clamped her mouth shut. But Hui Chun had already begun. Head bowed, she murmured her defense in a voice loud enough for all to hear. Honestly, madam, that's just unreasonable. The young master insisted on rushing in to save someone. He even got into a fight with our young lady to save them. Our young lady was pushed and hurt her leg. What more do you want from her? Not to mention, the moment he came out, he was all over that cousin girl, pulling and tugging at her. Everyone saw it. Anyone unaware would think that cousin was his lawful wife. Truly. What a nerve! Lady Pei's face flushed crimson. She sought confirmation, but caught Xia Xian's mocking expression and immediately hushed her. How dare you? A mere maid. Speak out of turn. She snapped. I promptly covered my face with my sleeve, biting open the blood-filled pouch I'd hidden there earlier. My voice weak and hoarse. Hui Chun is a maid I brought from the Qing household. I shall discipline her properly. There's no need for grandmother to trouble herself. Mid-sentence, a large mouthful of blood spilled forth. Amidst the gasps of the crowd, I fainted contentedly into Hui Chun's arms. Chaos erupted in the aftermath. My eyes remained closed. Yet inside, I was laughing. Let them be in turmoil. Let them be. There's far greater turmoil yet to come. Take, for instance, Sumao's pregnancy. Had it not been for what Pei Jingyu said after my death, I might never have discovered the truth. Sumao was never a cousin of the Pei family at all. She was an orphaned girl he met in the Northwest. His beloved. He refused to take a concubine within a year of my marriage, fearing it would humiliate the Qing family and brand him ungrateful. Yet he couldn't bear to part with his true love. So he brought Sumao into the mansion as a cousin, secretly meeting with her and concealing their affair, only to find she'd conceived his child. A cousin lodging with the Pei family, the master of a marquis' household. A life was lost during the national mourning period. If word got out, who knows what a scandal it would become. And then, I recalled the 3rd year after my death, when Pei Jingyu traveled south on an inspection tour and unexpectedly encountered Sumao, who had miraculously survived the calamity. He nearly trembled as he pulled her into his arms. Sumao, tears in her eyes, explained she hadn't deceived him intentionally, she'd simply been too tormented. I know Lord Pei treated me well, but as an orphaned girl with no status, it was only natural the lady and the old madam despised me. I just couldn't bear to lose our child. I feared I might not be able to protect him. Yet I also dreaded that if I did protect him, it would tarnish your reputation, Pei Lang. So I used the fire as an opportunity, turning the tables. Pei Lang, you won't blame me, will you? Having said this, she brought forth the child, now over 2 years old. At this point, what could Pei Jingyu possibly say? Without a moment's hesitation, he accepted her explanation entirely. completely forgetting that I had died unjustly in the midst of it all. Because of them. But then again, it made sense. Back then, he hadn't truly lost anything. Even the fleeting pangs of guilt that occasionally flashed through his heart, how could they compare to the joy of reuniting with his long-lost, resurrected moonlight? Only. I wonder what expression Pei Jingyu will wear in this lifetime when he learns Sumao orchestrated the entire fire. I'll be waiting to see. I fell ill. The sickness came on violently, confining me to bed. While I lay recuperating, the Marquis's residence descended into utter chaos. Outside, the glorious tale of the Marquis of Xuanda's heir rescuing a damsel in distress and sacrificing himself had already spread throughout the capital. What respectable household in the capital didn't know that Pei Jingyu had caused an uproar over an unnamed, unwed orphan girl? That he'd laid hands on his lawful wife, enraging her so much she coughed up blood and fell unconscious? The rotten core of the Marquis of Brocade Manor had finally been laid bare before all. Inside the manor, Pei Jingyu's right leg was completely ruined, requiring amputation from the thigh down. Truthfully, it hadn't been so utterly ruined at first. The initial injury hadn't been that severe. But Pei Jingyu, stubbornly upholding propriety between the sexes, refused to be carried. Gritting his teeth, he insisted on being supported by others to personally escort Sumao out. The hastily summoned physician's skills were limited. The wound wasn't thoroughly cleaned, and by the time they returned to the Marquis's residence, it had already become infected and was oozing pus. After that, doctors began saying Pei Jingyu's leg might have to be amputated. But Lady Pei refused to believe it. She berated the physician as incompetent, banished him, and vowed to find the finest doctor to treat her grandson. This back and forth delayed treatment for several more days. By the time she finally resolved to let surgeons operate on Pei Jingyu, necrosis had spread so extensively through his right leg that amputation was the only option. Sumao instantly became the target of everyone's blame. Lady Pei blamed her for being a disaster magnet, shamelessly bringing misfortune upon her grandson, and scrutinized her with every possible fault. Even the elderly Marquis Pei, bedridden for years after battlefield injuries, was enraged enough to leap up, vowing to severely discipline his ungrateful grandson for his reckless behavior and to expel that unruly cousin from the household. But Pei Jingyu refused. Not only did he refuse, but the very next day after regaining the strength to rise, he declared he would take Sumao as his concubine, adopting a what's the point of pretending attitude. He argued that since Sumao was both the Lady Pei's grandniece and had been raised under her care, she was certainly worthy of being a noble concubine. The Lady Pei had intended to inform me, asking me to handle the arrangements for taking her in. But before she could speak, Hui Chun suddenly knelt with a thud, pinched her own thigh, and began weeping uncontrollably. "Please, madam, spare our young mistress. I am but a servant, you may beat or scold me as you will. But have pity on our young mistress, who loved the young master with such devotion. After his accident, grief consumed her, damaging her health. She eats not, sleeps not. If the young master takes a concubine, our young mistress would support it 100-fold. But her health." I snapped at her. "Nonsense. Once I married into the Pei family, I became a Pei woman. Whatever grandmother commands, even if it costs me my very life, I shall obey without question." Yet the words barely left her lips before she gasped for breath. Her handkerchief stained with blood, her face drained of all color. All just powdered makeup. The maids and matrons outside, along with the physician I'd specially invited from elsewhere, all craned their necks, watching intently. Lady Pei was startled too, hastily picking up the medicinal broth by the bedside and pretending to feed it to me. My hand trembled, and the scalding liquid spilled all over her. This illness kept me bedridden for over a month. During that entire month, I saw Pei Jingyu only once. Pushed in a wheelchair, he brought Sumao to pay respects with the concubine's tea ceremony. My hair was unkempt. My face gaunt with sickness. Yet he looked as if terrified I might devour Sumao. Shu Yi. I wronged you with Miao Miao. But now that Miao Miao has entered the household, and you are my rightful principal wife, you must show tolerance. Miao Miao is gentle and fragile, do not treat her harshly. Sumao then knelt with a thud. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Her voice soft and sweet as a nightingale. Madam, I know you never favored me. Now you blame me for secretly meeting with Lord Pei, bringing shame upon the Marquis's household. But Lord Pei and I truly love each other. Miao Miao dares not ask for much. Madam, Miao Miao only begs for a small corner of your tolerance. To stay by Pei Lang's side. For this, Miao Miao would gladly die. What a bitter cup of tea. Hui Chun trembled with rage beside me. I said nothing, only silently wiped away my tears and helped Sumao to her feet. Then, as soon as I recovered, I immediately had Sumao's courtyard enclosed. What is the mistress doing? Her face was full of contempt. These days, I had spoiled her rotten. I remembered Pei Jinyu's words and ordered my servants to provide her with the finest food, clothing, and amenities, coupled with my own weariness. Not a single person had reminded her to pay her respects or inquire after me all these days. Now, she wore vermilion brocade embroidered with jewels, radiant and dazzling, while I stood in plain white robes. To all appearances, she seemed the true mistress of this household, while I resembled a neglected, mistreated concubine. I pulled a box from my sleeve and hurled it at her with all my strength. See for yourself what this is. If not for Mother Lu finding it outside your courtyard today, I'd never have known you possessed such talent. The box grazed her temple, leaving a trail of blood. Inside lay a man and a woman, stark naked, her face drained of color at the single glance. She screamed, "No! This isn't mine! You're slandering me!" Of course I knew it was slander. But so what? As long as Lu Mama found the real thing in her room today, this item, whether hers or not, would become hers. Besides, this wasn't what I wanted anyway. Without another word, I had her pinned to the ground, determined to teach her a lesson. Nearby, several maids stood menacing, bamboo rods in hand. Sumao was utterly panicked. Who dares strike me? I am the crown prince's beloved concubine. Who dares lay a hand on me? The bamboo rod struck her back. She shrieked. No! You can't hit me! I'm carrying the crown prince's child. This was the line I'd been waiting for. I scrambled to my feet, panic-stricken, defeated, and utterly incredulous. You're carrying the young master's child? Sumao broke free from the old maids. Her maid, Inger, seized the chaos to push open the courtyard gate, rushing to fetch the young master. The moment the gate swung open, she locked eyes with my elder sister from my maternal family. Young mistress. She started to cry out, but it was too late. Sumao's voice carried across the courtyard, clear and resolute. Yes. I am already over 3 months along. She stood proudly, her hand resting on her still unrevealed belly. The eldest mistress didn't expect this. Did she? I already bore the young master's child. So what if you're the crown prince's legally wedded wife? The crown prince said that once he inherits the title, he'll petition for our child to be named crown prince. I'll always be above you. The words hung in the air, silencing everyone. Outside, Hui-chan was leading my elder sister and several of my former close friends past the late fragrance pavilion. The one leading the way was the most gossip-hungry woman in the entire capital. Inside, Mother Lu finally discovered Sumao's hidden treasure chest and silver tray tucked away in the room. She let out a loud cry, stumbled, and the object flew straight out into the courtyard. When she looked up again, all she could see were pairs of eyes filled with contempt, disbelief, shame, embarrassment, and glistening tears. What followed was a deluge of impeachment petitions. Ever since the temple fire, Pei Jingyu had not attended court. Even so, the accusations poured into the Marquis's residence like snowflakes. They accused the old Marquis of failing to raise his son properly, of moral decay within the Chien de Marquis household, and the Crown Prince of favoring his wife over his concubines and showing disrespect to the late emperor. Many of these impeachment petitions originated from my father's faction. Lady Pei summoned me for questioning. I couldn't be bothered to pretend anymore, merely excusing myself on grounds of illness. By the time I arrived, 3 days had passed. Rumors of the Pei family's impending title revocation were already running rampant. Chaos erupted in the Hall of Longevity. Lady Pei ordered a bowl of abortion medicine for Sumao, but Sumao refused outright. Relying on Pei Jingyu's presence, she stormed into the hall, wailing and protesting. She pleaded for mercy, begging the matriarch to treat her as if she died violently. She vowed to drown herself in the lake after giving birth. I knew her scheme all too well. She merely sought to use this incident as an escape route, while sowing discord between me and Pei Jingyu before her departure. Once the dust settled, she planned to return to this estate under a new identity, bearing the Marquis's eldest grandson, her reputation restored. But Pei Jingyu didn't know. Not only did he not know, he was a fool. He actually let her tears soften his heart. He even said nonsense like, "The sage is benevolent, surely he wouldn't truly take this child's life. Since things have come to this, I'll take full responsibility." Madame Pei was so enraged she smashed several sets of teaware. When I entered, I happened to overhear Pei Jingyu blaming me. In the end, it was all Qing Shui's fault. If she hadn't stirred up this mess, how could it have? Sumao was also weeping and wailing. I dared not speculate about the mistress. But how could such a coincidence exist in this world? Just as Lady Pei was about to frown and rebuke me. But the next moment, she spotted me behind the curtain and abruptly halted her words, forcing a smile. "Shuyi, you've finally come. Are you feeling better?" Her attitude shifted from haughty to obsequious. It seemed these past 3 days had brought her to her senses. She must have realized that blaming me now was pointless. She must have finally remembered 2 years ago, when the Marquis of Xuanda faced imprisonment and loss of title for battlefield errors. It was I who pleaded with my father to plead the case for the entire Pei family. It was then that Pei Jingyu knelt before my father, pledging his lifelong devotion to me in exchange for my father's favor. I lowered my eyes, silent. Hui Chun trembled with rage. I patted her hand, then lunged forward and slapped Sumao across the face. She fell to the ground. I collapsed beside her, sobbing uncontrollably, my voice quivering. "If not for you, if not for your shameless actions causing this mess, how could things have come to this?" Pei Jingyu clenched his fists. After all, everyone knew exactly who I was cursing. But in the next moment, I wiped away my tears and curtsied to the old Lady Pei. I became the second person in this room to speak for Sumao. "Grandmother, I'm not pleading for that worthless servant. If I could, I'd wish her dead 1,000 times over. But now that things have come to this, she carries the heir's child. Even if we strike this child, what good would it do? It would only wound the bond between you and the heir, the bond between grandmother and grandson. The paramount concern now is devising a way to preserve the Marquis's title. But how could it be preserved? Pei Jingyu was the Marquis's only son. The Marquis's wife had passed away early, and the Marquis, deeply devoted, had taken only her as his wife. They had only this one son, Pei Jingyu, whom he had designated as heir apparent at a young age. Now that he's lost his leg, it's only a matter of time before the emperor grows weary of him. The worry deepened on Lady Pei's face. In the Hall of Longevity, she dismissed the attendants and looked at me, her lips parting. "Shuyi, I know you've suffered wrongs. Yuer is at fault here. But look at the state of our marquis now. The marquis lies gravely ill. And I am no longer of use. You must find a way, beg your father to speak on behalf of our marquis. I could only wipe away my tears. My words sounding alarmist. Grandmother, do you think I haven't considered it? I still hope for Lord Pei's recovery. But my father said the emperor values filial piety above all. And this is a grave offense of disrespect toward the late emperor. Our family's title is likely lost for good. That alone would be bad enough. But if they continue their accusations and drag up the events from 2 years past, then even our entire family's lives could be at stake. Could it really be that serious? Her face instantly paled. Outside, a distant relative of the Pei family who had rushed over upon hearing the news also turned pale. I continued to wipe away tears. It's all my fault as the eldest wife. I just can't bear to see grandmother suffer. This is clearly my and young Master Pei's fault. Yet it drags grandmother and our entire family into this punishment with us. I have no face to meet the Pei family's ancestors. As soon as she finished, several aunts and uncles from the collateral branch of the Pei family rushed in, chattering all at once. This is utterly disastrous. If only Yuer had a younger brother. If only the marquis could have another son. While the emperor's decree remains undecided, we must quickly plead our case. Preserving the title must come first. I wiped my tears while quietly observing Lady Pei. Truthfully, I too wanted to know how Lady Pei and Marquis Pei would choose. On one side lay privilege and glory. On the other, a flesh and blood kin, legs shattered, mind clouded, worthless. How would these two closest to Pei Jingyu decide? Hadn't Pei Jingyu always prized his title as heir to the marquisate above all, boasting of it? Even after becoming crippled, he still dreamed of passing his title to his son while living freely with his beloved. I will make him lose everything. Abandoned by all. Lady Pei ultimately abandoned Pei Jingyu. Before the emperor's decree arrived, Pei Jingyu's father, the Marquis of Pei, submitted a memorial first. In the memorial, he lamented word by word his failure as a father, declaring himself unworthy to face the emperor. He accused Pei Jingyu of disobedience and filial disrespect, which had enraged and sickened Lady Pei. He stated he had already consulted with the clan elders and decided to expel Pei Jingyu from the family. Furthermore, he had adopted a virtuous and capable heir from a collateral branch and intended to petition for him to be named the new heir apparent. The emperor's Vermilion Edict was succinct, approved. Thus, Pei Jingyu was abandoned by the two people closest to him, while Sumao suffered a miscarriage from a bowl of abortion potion. Even as he was driven out of the marquis's residence, disbelief still clouded his face. As he climbed into the carriage, he suddenly grabbed my sleeve, his expression seething with fury. Qing Shuyi, why did you do this? If you harbored resentment toward me and Miao Miao, you could have told me privately. Why did you? Yet the moment his hand touched me, my attendant servant brushed it away, causing his wheelchair to sway. Hui Chun crossed her arms and spat. What? Still think you're the precious heir of the Marquis's mansion? You messed up and dragged our young mistress into this. Yet you still have the nerve to whine here. The shock on his face deepened, mingled with shame and fury. Even now, he still thought I was the same Qing Shuyi from before, the one whose heart and eyes were filled only with him. Who worshipped him as heaven? Who couldn't sleep at night over the slightest pain he endured? But times change. I gave his dark circles a casual glance. Didn't you say it yourself? Once I entered the Pei household and became a Pei woman, I must abide by the Pei family's rules. I only acted for the Pei family's sake. Besides, this matter was decided solely by father and grandmother. If the crown prince... Oh, right. I should call you master now. If master harbors resentment, you may simply grant me a divorce decree and send me home. Pei Jingyu's face turned pale, then flushed, before he finally fell silent. He wouldn't grant me a divorce. After all, I was now his highest stepping stone, his most valuable sacrificial pawn. Even if it meant dragging me down with him, he would never let me go. Pei Jingyu, Sumao, and I moved into Wui Alley. As a clan exiled for treason and filial disobedience, the old lady Pei dared not give him much. She provided only a private residence, a few shops, some fertile fields, and a modest amount of gold and silver for his needs. For an ordinary family, these possessions would suffice for generations. But who was Pei Jingyu? He had lived in luxury for over a decade, accustomed to fine wines and delicacies served on jade plates, not to mention his disobedience and disrespect toward the late emperor, for which His Majesty personally decreed his dismissal and 80 strokes of the cane. Now, his wounds hadn't even fully healed, and he was still carrying Sumao, who had suffered a miscarriage and needed proper rest. In just a month, he'd spent nearly everything Lady Pei had secretly slipped him, even selling off the shops. During this time, he came to see me, his face bearing a rare look of unease. Meanwhile, I remained wrapped in silk and brocade, living in luxury. I shut him down with a single sentence. You should know, sir, that only the most worthless men in this world would covet a woman's dowry. In the end, he couldn't bring himself to speak. After Pei Jingyu left, Hui Chun asked me, Miss, when do you think that dog Pei will finally agree to the divorce? Oh, she'd already started calling him dog Pei. I smiled. Soon. Soon. Just wait a little longer. I waited another half-month. On the night half a month later, the air was dry and parched. I opened my eyes in the darkness. Outside, flames had already begun to rise. The servants who had been keeping watch outside the room lay sprawled haphazardly on the ground. I went to knock on the door, but it had been locked from the outside. I sat quietly inside, watching the fire outside grow larger and larger, until I heard the servants shouting, Miss! We've caught them! We've caught them! The door was smashed open. Hui Chun shielded me as we fled through the section not yet engulfed by flames. Outside, the servants had captured several maids and attendants. Among them were two, one was Sumao's personal maid. The other was Pei Jingyu's attendant. Both still clutched buckets of oil, their task of dousing the flames unfinished. Catch the thief. Seize the evidence. I watched the flames slowly spread across the courtyard and smiled faintly. Since the fire had already started, it certainly wouldn't burn only my courtyard, right? That night, a massive fire engulfed Wui Alley. At the height of the blaze, I smeared soot over my face and body, then pounded the drum outside the magistrate's office. I accused Pei Jingyu of favoring his concubine over his wife, conspiring with her to murder his legitimate spouse, and plotting to seize her family's assets. Kneeling on the ground, I wailed with heartfelt sincerity, enunciating each word clearly. Favoring a concubine over one's wife was a grave crime, and a wife suing her husband was exceedingly rare. Yet both witnesses and evidence were present. My servants not only apprehended the arsonist but also discovered drugged food in the kitchen. Fortunately, neither of them had eaten it. More crucially, I was the legitimate daughter of Grand Tutor Cheng, while Pei Jingyu was branded by His Majesty as a traitor, disobedient, unfilial, and disrespectful to the late emperor. The only lingering doubt was the fire in Wui Alley. It was said Pei Jingyu set the fire with his concubine, yet it consumed more than just my courtyard. The prefect's explanation? Probably the wind direction. The prefect issued a letter of severance between Pei Jingyu and me. Pei Jingyu was sentenced to 40 strokes of the cane and 1 year of hard labor. Sumao's punishment was harsher. In the prefectural office, they turned on each other like dogs. One claimed she was coerced. As a concubine, she had no choice but to obey her master's will. The other insisted she knew nothing of it. It was her own jealousy that bred evil thoughts. leading her to conspire with my servant to murder the mistress of the house. Those so-called confessions were nothing but slander. Word for word. I watched them tear each other apart with cold indifference. I still remember when the imperial temple burned. Feigning risked his own life, determined to rescue his beloved. I stopped him once, and he resented me for the rest of his life. Now, after all they've been through, he saved someone, yet tasted the bitter fruit of his stubbornness. He got what he wished for. Yet they harbored resentment toward each other. They blamed each other, attacked each other. Each wished to forge their own path to peace with the other's life. But how could it be that simple? In the end, I pleaded for Sumao. As a concubine, plotting against the mistress of the house was a capital offense. But I had one more gift to give them. Feigning was escorted back to Wui Alley. Both he and Sumao received 40 lashes each, leaving them half dead. Their former residence had been burned to the ground, so he could only stay in the servants' quarters. While he lay unconscious, I sat by his bedside. When he awoke, I handed him the evidence in my hand. It was evidence I'd gathered these past days, proving that the fire at Huangjue Temple was staged by Sumao herself. Yet I never imagined his first reaction upon waking would be to stare at his severed leg and the wretched hovel before him, muttering to himself, "What's going on? How did I end up here?" Feigning had been reborn at this very moment. I watched him repeatedly reach for the empty trouser leg, wincing with each tug from his wounds. He murmured, "What happened? How did this happen?" After a moment, he snapped his head up to look at me and asked, "Shuyi, didn't you stop me during the fire at Huangjue Temple? Why didn't you stop me?" I stared at him for a long moment, then suddenly smiled, tossing everything in my hands onto the ground. "I don't need it anymore. None of it matters now. He's already received the harshest punishment heaven could give him. Just like after I died in my past life. When he told me, karma is clear as day. Retribution never fails." I returned home. When I came back, both my father and mother were waiting at the door to greet me. Mother's eyes brimmed with tears, while father approached me with his hands clasped behind his back in a stern expression. "I told you that Pei family was no good. Warned you not to marry into them. But you wouldn't listen." Yet I noticed his hands trembling slightly behind his back. Finally, he sighed and wiped his eyes as if absent-mindedly. "Just come back. Just come back. That Pei family brat dares treat you like this? Tomorrow I'll have people keep a close watch on them. I'll see what dirt we can dig up." Looking at the prematurely white hair at his temples, I couldn't hold back. My laughter turned to tears. Half a month later, another massive fire broke out in Wui Alley. At that moment, I was heading to Xinxiangzhai with Huichen to buy pastries when she suddenly leaned close to my ear and whispered softly, "Miss, I heard there was another huge fire in Wui Alley yesterday. Someone was burned alive. Is that so?" I paused slightly, then nodded. The driver urged the carriage forward, but soon we collided with someone. I lifted the curtain to see it was Feigning. I had never seen him like this before. His hairpin was undone, his dark locks disheveled. A patch of his sleeve was singed by fire. Yet his eyes burned with an intense, stubborn light. The driver dismounted to urge him away, but he refused to budge, even tumbling from his wheelchair as he clutched the reins. He shouted, "Who dares touch me? I am the crown prince of the Xian de Marquis household, personally appointed by His Majesty as the Zhaowu captain. This is insubordination." Then he turned to me. It's Jingyu. Rest assured, the one who harmed us is dead. Nothing stands between us now." A murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. That must be the former crown prince of Xianda, right? I remember seeing him ride through the streets in all his glory. How could someone so young? Pfft. What crown prince of Xianda? He's nothing but a traitor. A disobedient son who dishonored the late emperor. Who knows what sins he committed to lose his mind like this. Hui-chan was so furious she threw pastries at him. Then had the servant stuff his mouth shut. Pa! What kind of rogue beggar dares spew such filth? I quickly pressed her hand down. Enough. Enough. Don't waste the food. I stuffed another piece into her mouth. Is it good? She paused. Then flashed a simple, silly smile. It's delicious. Then let's go home. Father and mother are waiting for us. The end.